The Browns are back in the building with OTAs underway. The draft is next week, and lots of news from around the NFL. The Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara starts right now.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara, the sickest Cleveland Browns podcast.
Cut back by Chubb. He's to the 10. He's still running to the 5. He dips outside left. He's going in. Touchdown. What a run. Nick Chubb.
It's going to be sick.
All right, everybody. Almost draft week. Not the same hype as in past years, of course, because we don't have a first-round pick. Don't have a second-round pick. We'll get 2/3, and there's some work that still needs to be done. Andrew Berry, GM of the Browns, Kevin Stefanski, both spoke there. We heard from players. Everyone's back in the building. We're getting that feel that, yes, the football season has begun. And we'll get to some NFL news off the field, as well as some NFL draft prop plays that I want to get to as we head up to the NFL draft in Kansas City next week. But this is a Browns show. Let's get to some Browns news. And who better to go to than ESPN Browns analyst, writer extraordinaire, Jake Trotter, on with us. Jake, how are you?
Andy, how you doing?
Doing good, sir. Doing good. Hey, the year started now, right? People back in the building. We're grooving. We're going. What were some of your just basic takeaways from week one? What's the vibe? Let's start here. What's the vibe in the building compared to this time last year, which, as we know, was Baker Mayfield was still here. Lots of Deshaun Watson drama. How is it different to this year?
Well, it's a little bit less non-chaotic than last year, Andy. As you mentioned, the Deshaun Watson trade had just happened. I want to say that press conference was like a week ago to the year. So it was pretty close to the draft because they didn't have it for a couple of weeks after they made the trade. It's probably like beginning of April, right? And then, as you mentioned, Baker Mayfield was still on the roster, and I think everybody thought he was going to be traded at some point, but it was not happening immediately. And so you began to wonder, could he actually be on this team in training camp? How awkward is that going to be? Nobody knew how many games Deshaun Watson was going to be suspended. Ended up being, I think, a lot more than a lot of people in the building predicted at the time. So it just was a lot more calm than it was last year. And I think there's a lot of optimism coming out of free agency and the things they were able to do. You know, I asked Andrew Berry today on Friday, how would you compare the talent level of this team to when you first arrived in 2020, which you remember in 2020, they went to the second round of the playoffs, and, I think he kind of danced around it, but you get the sense that he believes this is the most talented team that he's had. So the expectations are going to be high. They should be. This is the team that should be in the playoffs. It's going to be a massive disappointment if it's not. If that's not where the season ends. But it's just less drama, less chaos, and I think a little bit more optimism would be the way I would characterize the vibe.
Jake, I think it's a great point you bring in. The most talented team, which means that there's no excuses. It's no COVID. There's no Deshaun Watson drama. Hopefully nothing else springs up from anybody else. And it really speaks to me that there's no excuses this year. This is the year for Stefanski, for Bear, and I think that's why, I don't know about you, I'm kind of getting that feel like it's all in. You get an Elijah Moore. Great contract, by the way. He's still rising, 2 years cheap, and a guy who's ascending. I love that. But it really gives me that vibe of like, all right, guys, if we fail this year, we might not be here next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you start with Kevin Stefanski. All eyes are going to be on how Deshaun Watson plays under him. It wasn't great last year. Deshaun Watson was basically Russell Wilson statistically. If you compare his 6 games to Russell Wilson's entire season, and we know how bad Denver's year went. So they're going to have to be much better. And I mean, listen, the schedule is very manageable. I know the AFC North is pretty tough, especially if Lamar's back in Baltimore. We'll see there. But I mean, I think the Browns play basically almost everybody who's like drafted in the top 5 or 6, or at least those spots that maybe got traded, like the Rams, for example. They play the Texans, they play the Colts. You go on down the list, there's a lot of manageable games on the schedule. There's no reason this team shouldn't win 10 games. I mean, I think that's the absolute minimum. And there's no reason they shouldn't be in the playoffs. And if they don't get there, I don't think there's any excuses left for this coaching staff. And then you would look at Andrew Berry and like, why is this team not performing? Because it's not just going to be on Kevin. And we've seen the Haslams. They obviously are not afraid to pull the trigger and make hiring and firing decisions. So it's a huge year for everybody in that building, I think, starting with Kevin Stefanski.
Well, and the Haslams have been uncharacteristically patient, Jake, with this whole thing, right? Like if we went back when they first bought the team and we had what happened last year, coming with the expectations, gone, done, no questions asked. But now you give that patience, you give that one extra year, that chance. So we look at, and we want Jim Schwartz to do well. That defense has to play up and do better. But really, it comes down to the quarterback and the offense. How different is this Browns offense going to look this season compared to last year? Because we talk a lot of fantasy on the show as well, and I've been getting a lot of messages of like, where do I draft Nick Chubb? What does this mean from the running game?
Well, first of all, the Haslams should be patient because they put that team and that coaching staff in a no-win situation with all the chaos that they were under last year. And it's very difficult, I think, for that team to prepare for during training camp for the season. I mean, I was there. It was an absolute circus every day. So the idea that they would punish Kevin Stefanski for what happened last year, I think would have been unfair. And then, 2021, Baker Mayfield had the injury. I think that they would have been a lot better, obviously, if 2020 Baker had been the quarterback in 2021. He was not. As far as the offense, Andy, I mean, it's going to be different. And I think people need to get accustomed to the idea this is not going to be the Nick Chubb show anymore. This offense is going to revolve around Deshaun Watson. So what does that mean? There's going to be 3, 4, 5 wide receivers on the field almost every down. David Njoku, obviously the tight end. And I think they'll run some 2 tight end sets, but not in the way that we're accustomed to seeing, where they're all bunched up at the line of scrimmage. I mean, this is going to be a pass-first offense. And I think the Pittsburgh Steelers game is at the end of last season is going to be pretty indicative of what we're going to see. We're going to see the Browns throw the ball 30, 35, 40, 45 times a game. The days of, pounding the ball and play action, I mean, it's just not what they're going to do. They're going to live or die on the arm and the legs to some degree of Deshaun Watson. And this is going to be his show, and everybody else, including Nick Chubb, is going to be a complementary piece to that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the one element, I guess multiple elements, but that bring Deshaun Watson to a different potential. This is all potential. We hope. There's a lot of saying we hope he can get back to where it was. We expect. But Jake, this is the most athletically gifted, talented quarterback the Browns have maybe ever had. Not just since 99, but maybe ever. When you look at what he can do, because you can add in that design run aspect. Deshaun's gotten a lot smarter with not sacrificing his body like he did the first couple of years in the league. And when you add that element in and his creativity and hopefully the offensive line being able to adjust to help him extend those plays, if they're clicking, like I think Browns fans are tentative to be excited, but Jake, I'm kind of getting excited with the possibilities of what that all means.
It depends on what you think of Deshaun Watson. If you think he's 2020, he's going to be 2020 Deshaun Watson or 2019 Deshaun Watson, I think even more so, then this team should be able to compete with anybody because they're going to have the offensive line, especially in the middle. Their receivers, maybe it's not top 5 in the NFL, but I think it's better than it was last year. And I think it's certainly competent and capable, especially when you include David Njoku. And then they've got Nick Chubb, who is a top 3, top 4 running back in the NFL, at least, if maybe not the best guy between the tackles in the league. So, they should be prolific. But again, you saw last year, and Deshaun Watson didn't play well. Now, was that because he was coming off 700 days away? Was that because he was in a new offense? Was that because of all the accusation that had been made against him, and that was in his head as he was playing? Like, I don't know the answer to that. And we're not going to know the answer to that until we see him play again. But I know they're optimistic in the building that he's going to return to being the player that he was before. And I think you could have made the case that 2019, 2020 Deshaun Watson was like top 3, top 5 quarterback in the NFL. At least that was my opinion at the time. I mean, I remember thinking Deshaun Watson looks like, to me, one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, it's a little bit different now because, Andy, in the AFC, there's like 7 of those guys that you can make the case for. Yeah. So Deshaun Watson could be better, like a lot better, and he might be the 7th best quarterback in the AFC because you've got Mahomes, you've got Allen, you've got Burrow, maybe you've got Lamar. You're probably going to get Aaron Rodgers, Justin Herbert. I mean, who am I forgetting? And then I think there are guys like, Tua and Kenny Pickett. that are very capable. I mean, we saw that up close in person. So it's going to be a huge challenge, but I think the Browns have a chance. And a lot of seasons in the past where they have not had a chance, and I think that's reason to be excited.
Definitely. And yeah, it comes down all the window dressing around it. It comes down to if Deshaun Watson can perform, if him and Stefanski can get in the lockstep, if this offense that was really kind of built for Jacoby Brissett last year can be tweaked and be effective. Now, another big part of this year, while we ride and die with Deshaun Watson, it's that defense with Jim Schwartz. And we all love the addition of Jim Schwartz. The additions of Dalvin Tomlinson on the defensive line, like Jake, everything they've done is an upgrade, but that D-line was so bad outside of Myles Garrett last year that it's not hard to upgrade. I'm just wondering, do you think they've done enough for Jim Schwartz and his abilities to be able to take advantage and put defenses like he's used in the past on the field?
Well, Myles Garrett said this week that, they want that defensive line to be a unit that is feared. I don't think they're there. Now, Myles Garrett's feared, but nobody else on that defensive line is, and I think will be next season. But can you just not have like one of the worst run defenses of the last decade? Like if they can just like improve upon that, they're going to have a chance. I mean, the Browns had like one of the 10 worst run defenses of the last decade, statistically. If you look at EPA, it was horrible. And there was no scheme that was going to fix that. They just didn't have the personnel. Maybe they could have done some different things scheme-wise that might have helped a little, but at the end of the day, the run defense was always going to be terrible, and they overestimated, how big of a hole they were going to have at defensive tackle when they put that team together last year. Yeah. People look at the defensive backfield and they remember all the coverage busts, but in a lot of ways, it was still a really good, if not elite, coverage unit. I mean, the Browns in man-to-man coverage last year, despite all those busts we saw, and there were a lot of them, they were still number one in opposing QBR. That's number one in terms of quarterbacks had the worst rating against the Browns when they were in man coverage. They were top like 6 or 7 on the entire year, even with all those coverage busts. And really from week 7 on, they were elite. So I think that they have a chance to be very good in the secondary. If they could just work out some of the communication issues, maybe you replace Thornhill with John Johnson, coupled with bringing in the new defensive coordinator. Maybe that'll resolve all those issues. We'll see. But, they've got 3 guys in Emerson, Denzel Ward, and I guess Greg Newsom for now that can cover at a high level. And then I think if Grant Delpit can build off the way he finished last season, he's got a chance to be really good safety. So there's a lot to like there. But again, like, can they hold up against the run? I think that question's still out. And they need Obo to be really good, because if he's not, then Myles Garrett's going to face like the most double teams in the league by a considerable amount next year, because there's nobody really that you look at that defensive line that you think is going to cause a lot of disruption. So, I mean, even Tomlinson, I think, is more on this, he's closer to the solid than the spectacular, which is a massive upgrade over what they had last year, but still like, he's not Hargrave, who I think was at the top of their free agent board. He's not, one of the 2 or 3 elite defensive tackles in free agency. He's very good, though. And I thought it was a guy they had to get, and they did well in getting him. But they got to have other guys step up. And I think Obo is going to be real key. Like, if you buy stock in Obo, and they are, and I thought it was a really sharp kind of, I don't want to say buy low, but maybe get in on a guy before he explodes. I think it made a lot of sense. But they need him to be really good, because otherwise, I mean, who's getting after the quarterback? I mean, name the guy. I can't.
No, it's Myles Garrett. That's it.
Yeah.
And then if you send Grant Delpit sprinting down, that's it. That's all you got, right? There's nothing really else there. The Obo thing is that's a great point. I could still see them, Jake, and we'll get to a bit of draft talk in a second, but I could see them maybe after the draft signing one of the remaining edge rush guys, because there's still some good rotational pieces. Like, I would take Frank Clark today, 29, 2-year deal. Let's go. Like, on a rotation, I think that'd be tremendous. So I think that would, depending how they do in the draft, that could be an area.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely going to sign a defensive end. They're going to sign a veteran defensive end. That may not happen until, after minicamp. May not even happen until training camp starts. But they're going to sign another defensive end. I don't think there's any question about that. Jadeveon Clowney is still available, by the way, if you're interested. Yeah. So, but here's the other problem, that they're going to run into is like they don't have any cap. They're not going to have a lot of cap space going forward to do much, and they know that. I mean, Deshaun Watson's cap hits are going to be like 60 to 65 million, every year going forward, and that's before we even get into the Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward contracts. I mean, two of the highest paid players in the league at their position. So they can't just this is not 20 when you had all that cap space that you could use. They're going to have to save up because the rollover is going to help them a little bit manage that Watson cap hit, because you can't restructure his contract literally every year. Or maybe you can, but you're going to have a $90 million cap hit eventually.
At some point.
Yeah. So they got to be careful, but I do think that there are some veteran, like you said, defensive ends that are out there that could help. And I think that's something that they will do. Who that's going to be, I don't know. But that would be something to watch. If they're going to add another free agent between now and training camp, it's going to come at defensive end.
Yeah, you got to do the rental deal. That's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to do the 1 year prove it deal and hope you get a guy in a great year to prove it, and then he goes. Greg Newsom, you mentioned. Now, there's social media. Greg Newsom wants to be traded. Greg Newsom goes on social media. No, I don't. And then he spoke this week. How do you feel is Greg Newsom on board if he has to play nickel or whatever has to be done on the Jim Schwartz defense?
Well, he seems to be for now. He seems to be bought in for now, but he wasn't happy with his role last year. He was pretty out in the open about that, even on Twitter, saying he wasn't going to play in the slot again. Listen, Greg can say whatever he wants to say. You don't change agents just to change agents. I mean, there was a reason behind that. So I think it's something that's going to be worth watching going forward. But I mean, the fact of the matter is Emerson and Ward on the outside and Newsom on the slot. That's their best, I think, use of those three guys. I mean, Newsom might be better on the outside, but I don't know that he's better than Martin Emerson. And Emerson gives you the physicality, the range that I think really complements Denzel Ward well. Who can run with some of the top receivers in the league. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. I think it's fine for now, but I don't care what Newsom said the other day. It doesn't take away from, I think, the way that he's felt, the moves that he's made, and things that he's said before. It's definitely going to be worth watching.
In conversation with Jake Trotter, covers the Browns for ESPN. A little bit of draft talk, then we'll let you go, Jake. So, Browns, as we said, no first-round pick, no second-round pick. They got Elijah Moore for that. Love that deal. They got another pick back from the Jets in that transaction, which was a third-round pick. So we got 2/3. Almost impossible to predict, okay, what player, because by the third round, who knows? But do you feel the Browns are in we would ideally like a certain position, just straight up best player available? What are you hearing and feeling?
I think that they are best player available, but they are going to lean defense front seven, I think, in that conversation. So if there's a receiver they really like, they can certainly take that guy. If there's an offensive tackle they really like, especially a developmental guy that they feel like they can start down the line, they can take that guy. I would not be stunned if they took a running back at that spot. Who knows? Maybe there's a quarterback that drops and they can bring that guy in. I think anything's possible with the third round pick. And I do think that they are going to look at their board and say, okay, this is our best rated guy. We're taking him. But if there's a tie, it's going to be a front seven guy. Right. And I think they know that. They know that they've got to boost the talent there. It's just not what it needs to be. And we'll see what happens with guys like, Alex Wright or Isaiah Thomas or Perion Winfrey, although, that's rough right now. But I think that's the position to watch. But would I be stunned if they didn't take any of those guys on day two? No, it would not stun me.
It's going to be fascinating to see if they use both third round picks. They trade. Well, Andrew Barry, I don't think has ever traded up, but if they trade down, hopefully they go at maybe bundle or something and move up.
I traded up to go get, I believe, JOK back in is that 2021? So they've done it before.
Yes.
I actually think it's very possible that they could use those 2 third round picks and move up and get a guy that they really like. And the other option too is they just do what they usually do, which is trade back and collect more picks. Because guess what? They don't have many picks in 2024 either. For next year.
And they have 2 4s and 2 5s. You could always bundle, right? You can bundle those 2 5s, move up. Who knows? Interesting. So for Browns fans, probably nothing interesting until the Friday but who knows? Jake, tell people where they can find you. You're going to be doing lots of draft, off-season work, all sorts of good stuff.
Yeah, you can find me on ESPN, and I don't know if I'm still on Twitter, but I was at one point, so maybe there. I don't know.
We all lost the blue check mark.
ESPN.
Yeah, we all lost
blue
check mark.
I did.
Me too.
It's fine. Past due. It's fine with me.
It makes me feel I'm like we earned those blues though, man. These are posers.
Yeah. What have you done for me lately?
Exactly.
Right?
Elon Musk, whatever. All right, Jake. Thank you. We'll talk soon.
Okay. See you, Andy.
Thank you. There he is, Jake Trotter on Twitter. He is still on Twitter at Jake_Trotter. A great follow, and get him on ESPN, of course, for all your Browns news. The Perrion Winfrey stuff still sort of hanging. Andrew Berry spoke to the media Friday and was he's not going to say anything, but he said they're still evaluating the situation. They're not letting him go before the draft, folks. You know why? Because if they don't get another defensive tackle that they like, they're going to need the body of Perrion Winfrey and hope that Jim Schwartz can smarten this guy up. Lots of talent, but in between the years right now, making a lot of mistakes. Talent's there. Can you bring that out? We're going to have to wait and see. But Jake's right. The third round will be interesting. And the thing is, it is such a top-heavy draft for edge rushers, those pass rushers. But there's going to be probably 6, 7 edge guys taken in the first round, right? Then the second flow. So by the time you get to the third round, what are you getting? So maybe there's someone on their board. They feel, okay, this guy can't stop the run to save his life, but man, he can get after the quarterback. Okay, well, we need some of those because I'm not convinced on Obo, whose career high in sacks is 5, to come in. That front seven still has a lot of work. Make sure, guys, too. Hey, make sure you're clicking the notification bell, right? Get the notification, click subscribe. We always appreciate that. Put your comments in. What do you think of the Browns offseason so far? Who do you think, either a player or position, if you got a player, throw them at me for the 2 third-round picks for the Browns. Who or what position do you think the Browns should be drafting in the third round of this NFL draft? I want to hear from you there. I want to hear from you on Twitter, at SickPodBrowns, at AndyMC81, on Instagram, at AndyMCSports. Let me know there. Now, there are lots of NFL draft prop plays. You know I love that. From our buddies at Betfred Sportsbook, okay? So if you go right now, it's in the link down below, folks. I'm going to pull up what my guy Jason sent me from Betfred. Let's see here. There we go. Some of the prop plays. So you go to the link in here, you click on it, you sign up, you deposit, and you make your first bet. You are going to be qualified to win some crazy prizes each week. Last season, we gave away Browns-Bengals tickets. We gave away autographed Nick Chubb jersey. Lots more weekly prizes. And you also they're changing them all the time, but you get some sweet sign-up bonuses. So just go right there and you go to Betfred Sports through that link and you'll be just fine. So here's some prop plays right now. So odds to win 2023 NFL draft, total defensive backs in the first round. You can get total offensive linemen you can bet on. Total quarterbacks drafted in the first round. Total running backs, total wide receivers. So it's just a few of the options. If we're looking at, let's go to the quarterback one for a sec. Okay. Now, the CJ Stroud smear job is ridiculous. That's been going on this past week. This stinks of Jim Irsay and the Colts trying to get him to fall to him at 4. The smearing of CJ Stroud, unfounded. It's like, oh, you stood up the Mannings. Okay, like this is for not playing any more football. This guy goes from first overall pick. Either Bryce Young's campaign is going crazy and it's phenomenal, and they're just pushing him up the board attitude-wise. But CJ Stroud not being considered the first overall pick for the Carolina Panthers, I think, is ridiculous. I will give Bryce Young a ton of credit, though. It's on social media. There's a video. It was some Alabama football show. I don't know. But do Bryce Young, it'll pop up, I'm sure. I'll give this young man credit. This guy gets it. Okay? And I want him to do well after hearing this. Because despite being 5'10", generously listed, despite being 190 pounds at the combine 204, that's soaking wet, less than 190, and being slight, his attitude to the question, what about people being short, where someone like a Lamar Jackson or other people take offense to it, get all worked up. He said, hey, this is entertainment. This is sports. That's what's great about it. People are talking. People are talking about this. They're debating. They're having fun. I don't take any issue with it. And it seems so genuine that he's just like, this is sports. And he embraced it. And seeing that, I'm like, man, that guy's going to be a great leader. Might be a great coach someday. I just can't believe that he's worthy of the first overall pick. Because of his attitude, I hope I'm wrong. I hope he does great. It seems like an awesome dude. CJ Stroud should be the first overall pick. But how many quarterbacks do you think will be drafted in the first round? Really, it looks like CJ Stroud, probably not first. Bryce Young, Will Levis. You see the jacked pictures of Will Levis? Enjoy being randomly drug tested, Will. My gosh, looks like he's in AEW. Guy's jacked to the nines. Anthony Richardson. Woohoo, that's my guy there. I just want to see him run through people. And then the Tennessee quarterback Hooker floating around in that possible first round. That's kind of a wild card one. So we're looking at 4 to 5. I personally am going to say 4 quarterbacks get drafted. That would be my Betfred best bet for quarterbacks taken in the first round. But let me know who you think. Who do you think is going to be taken? How many quarterbacks in that first round? Who's first overall? It's looking like Bryce Young. But the interesting part becomes if the Texans, here's the other part I wanted to bring up. The Houston Texans now, rumors are if CJ Stroud is there, they're not going to take him. And one of the reasons is that he is the same agent as Deshaun Watson. Well, we know how that ended in Houston. Not good. So what if CJ Stroud drops? Do we see a team like the Tennessee Titans try to trade up? Did the Colts, who are at 4, do they have to try to jump up one spot to make sure? How does that look to get CJ Stroud? There's no way that dude's getting past 4. It's the talent, the overcoming, I've gone through it before on the show, is exceptional. This guy's a day one starter. How does that look? That's what could be really interesting there. Make sure to get your show gear, get your fantasy football championship gear, fantasy football and Browns gear, link below in the store. We're going to have a big draft show on Wednesday next week. We're going to have the big draft show Wednesday and then a special Monday show to recap and see what the Browns did. So stay tuned for that. Again, click the notification bell. Don't miss out. Click the subscription. Leave a comment. Subscribe on Twitter too, at SickPodBrowns, at AndyMC81, on Instagram at AndyMCSports. Let's see what happens over the weekend. Thanks to Jake Trotter and to all of you. We will see you in draft week next week. As always, go Browns.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Andy McNamara on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.